I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it. Voltaire. On 16 December 2008, the Indian National Congress, under the leadership of Minister of Communication, Information and Technology, Kapil Sibal, tabled and passed 8 bills in haste. The legislation of Section 66A, one among the 8 bills, concluded in a span of mere 15 minutes without garnering media spotlight or large scale public attention. A decisive law that could strip every Indian citizen of his right to freedom of speech and expression and lead the nation to a state of totalitarianism. Section 66A is an IT Act legislated with the sole focus on prohibition, or rather punishment, of hate speech across the internet. The first and second clause of the article states any person who sends, by means of a computer resource or a communication device, any information that is grossly offensive or has menacing character, any information which he knows to be false, but for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, insult, injury, criminal intimidation, enmity, hatred, or ill will, persistently by making use of such computer resource or a communication device, shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years and with fine. The article empowers the executive to act as a vanguard towards internet crimes like cyberbullying, spamming, and phishing, and thus is not completely without merit. The problem, however, is that the article is too vague. The term offensive and menacing are ambiguous and may vastly vary from context to context. Anyone could stretch the meaning of words like offensive, menacing, annoyance, inconvenience, etc. In short, the article curbs the right to freedom of speech and expression and upholds the right to intolerance and submission of free will. The third clause of the article: any electronic mail or electronic mail message for the purpose of causing annoyance or inconvenience, or to deceive or to mislead the addressee or recipient about the origin of such messages, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years and with fine. It was designed to counter terrorism and crime by taking away the power to remain anonymous. Provisions for anonymity, however, are the reasons why the internet is the ground for free speech and information flow across the world. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. Oscar Wilde.
Hi, so I'm going to talk to you about Section 66A and its ambiguity. Section 66A of the Information Technology Act basically seeks to suppress thought, kill free speech, and ensure that everybody knows that the Big Brother is watching you through all of this. He also tries really hard to ensure that there is no dissent in the society, but somehow this point just fails to come across. Fathered by the former Minister of IT, Kapil Sibal, this Harvard-educated eminent lawyer has ensured that such a regressive piece of legislation is not only law, but is used by the law enforcement agencies throughout our country by a digitally illiterate police force. Now, there are people who say that Section 66A isn't unconstitutional. They say that it is in tandem with Article 19A of our Constitution. The argument used for this is how even the right to freedom and expression is subject to what is known as reasonable restriction. That third-party harm is a ground freedom. Freedom of expression was subject to reasonable restrictions relating to defamation, contempt of court, decency or morality, security of state, friendly relations with foreign states, etc. The fact that some information is grossly offensive or that it causes annoyance or inconvenience while being known to be false cannot be a reason for curbing the freedom of speech unless it is directly related to decency or morality, public order or defamation. Now I'm going to talk to you about the ambiguity of the law. The law, which we already went through in the first section of the presentation, uses terms like menacing character, deeming offensive, causing annoyance, misleading, as well as false information telecasted due to hatred and ill will. Now, there is no objectivity in the assessment of this law. The ambiguous way in which it is written is massively left out for interpretation for the masses. Law being ambiguous are an extremely dangerous thing. A country functions on the basis of law, and hence there is no room for even the slightest bit of ambiguity. However, when laws are open to interpretation, it means that the rules that govern life and our country are misunderstood. The biggest problem, according to laymen like us, is that the amount of power this law gives particularly to individuals. The center, our state and union territories, not to arrest any person until prior approval was obtained from an officer not below the rank of Inspector General. In the metropolitan cities, or an officer below the rank of Deputy Commissioner or Superintendent of Police at the district level. However, this might not seem like a very big deal, but a closer understanding of this directive shows its dire consequences. What is essentially happening here is that a person is being elevated to a position where she can dictate the law. One has the ability to use his own subjective reasoning and discretion to decide whether or not a particular act falls under Section 66A. The person decides what is true, false, what is offensive, or causing annoyance. Now, this person isn't the man who was elected by the people after standing for elections from various constituencies. Now, the politicians who yield power which they don't respect will have the ability to pressurize inspectors to putting into jail anyone they feel is spreading false information against them and causing annoyance. For example, when two girls criticized the ban that was held on account of Bal Thackeray's death, they were simply put into jail, one for writing it and the other for liking it. The inept understanding of this law leaves policemen with no choice but to bow down to the pressure of politicians. Another implication of 66A lies in how it affects the fourth pillar of democracy. The fourth pillar is media and the valuable criticism it offers towards the government. It helps keeping politicians and institutions in check through massive ability that the media has to influence public opinion. Most media houses have websites. If anything they post is in the position of causing annoyance, inciting enmity or hatred, or causing inconvenience to people, it will simply curb the freedom of media houses to be openly critical of the state apparatus and politicians. The law isn't uniform for what is said online and what is said off it. By that, I mean, under Section 66A, I could simply say something that causes annoyance online and be put into jail for a maximum term of 3 years along with the imposition of a fine. However, if I said the same thing offline, it wouldn't be deemed to be an offense. We are not suggesting that it is a free-for-all society. There ought to be checks and balances, but putting in an all-encompassing wide section which can be interpreted in more than 100 different ways is surely a recipe for disaster. A disaster that continues to happen across the country. Now, there is no use lamenting that state governments are definitely misusing Section 66A, as the Home Minister admitted recently. Give them an object to abuse and they will definitely do so. For Section 66A of the IT Act, the only solution is that either it is made up of very sharp and not open to multiple interpretations, or it simply must go. It is for the government to decide which option they prefer, otherwise until then, we as citizens will suffer.
Section 66A of the Information Technology Act has had a number of arrests over the last few years. Some of them got immense attention from the media because of how silly the reasons for arrests were. First example that comes to shore is Shaheen Dada's comments on Bal Thakaray's death. The girl from Palghar was arrested for her quote, "Every day, thousands of people die, but still the world moves on. Just due to one politician dead, a natural death, everyone goes crazy. Respect is earned, not given out, definitely not forced. Today, Mumbai shuts down due to fear and not due to respect." Renu Srinivas, a friend of Shaheen Dada, was also thrown behind bars for liking the status. The second arrest is of a professor from the chemistry department at Jadavpur University. He was arrested for posting anti-Mamta Banerjee cartoons on his Facebook account. Professor Mahapatra was allegedly arrested for forwarding derogatory images of the then West Bengal Chief Minister to many recipients and mocking Trinamool government's policies. Air India employees were arrested for allegedly posting messages on Facebook criticizing the Supreme Court in May 2014. Cabin crew members Mayank Sharma and KVJ Rao were arrested after their colleague Sagar Karnik complained that the duo had posted derogatory remarks on the Prime Minister's office, the Indian national flag, and the Supreme Court while commenting on Air India pilot strike. They were subsequently released on bail. The aforementioned are few of the massively ridiculous incidents that got people into trouble for talking their minds out on social media. The ambiguity of the law provides grounds for people in power to exploit this privilege
and shut voices that knock the doors of rigidness and even corruption. The only way forward is to make it more accurate and less ambiguous,